In this LaTeX Quick Start Guide, we will show you how to format text, highlight text, color text, as well as change the font. So here in Overleaf, I have a relatively simple main.tex file. And of course, in our main.tex file, we can write some text. And if I recompile this, we'll see that text in our output. But what if we want to format this text to make it bold? In that case, I can use the shortcut Control B, which gives me access to the textbf command, and then I pass to this command as an argument the text I want to be bold. Hence, in our output, we will get some bold text. There are a bunch of other similar text formatting commands which are listed here. So we just used the textbf command, but there's also the textit command to generate italic text. We have the textsc command to generate small capital text, and there is the texttt command to generate typewriter text. So I'll just show you an example of those in Overleaf. So here I have added some more text, and I want to make this text italic. I can use the shortcut Control I for the textit command, and then I can also use the textsc command so that we can write small capital text, and then there is texttt so that we can write typewriter text. And if I recompile this, you can see an example of all of those. So the top one is bold, the next one is italic, then we have small capital. So small capital is a little bit different from normal uppercase because you see capital letters like the W are written in a slightly larger font size than the lowercase, even though all of the lowercase are still written as uppercase letters, so that is small capital. And then the last one here is typewriter text. It's just a different font that looks like a typewriter. Now, as well as the text formatting commands, there are also the text switching commands, which you can see here, which are bfseries to write boldface text. Then we have itshape for italic text, itshape for small capital, and TT family for typewriter text. Now, how those commands work is a little bit different. So if I add some more text here, and then I'll add some more text after this, and let's say I wanted just this text to be bold. Well, you might think that we could use the bfseries command. But if I recompile this, the bfseries command isn't just applied to this text here. As you can see, it is also applied to all other text after the command. So it's also applied to our next sentence down. To prevent this happening, what we do is we enclose the text which we want the command to apply to in two curly brackets. And when we enclose the text in these two curly brackets, this is known as a block. And therefore, this command now will only apply to the text in that block. And of course, as well as the bfseries command, we also have the command itshape to change our text to italic, scshape to change our text to small capital, and then there is TT family, so TT typewriter family, which will change our text to typewriter text. And there you can see in our output, we get similar text formatting to the previous set of commands. As well as applying different text formatting, you may wish to change the size of your text. And to do that, you can use these text sizing commands, which are listed here in order of increasing font size. So you have the command tiny for tiny text, then script size is a little bigger, then footnote size, small, normal size is just the normal sized font, which is the default font size. And then you have large with a small L, you have large with a big L, and similarly you have huge with a small h, and then you have huge with a capital H. And the way that we use these commands is similar to the text switching commands bfseries and itshape, in that we put the command here in a block, and then that block contains the text we want the command to apply to, and the command isn't applied to any text after the block. So below our previous example, let's say we have some more text, and I want to change the size of this text. I enclose it into curly braces, and then I use the command I want to apply. So here, this will generate some tiny text, and there you can see that this text is much smaller than the default text size. And as well as tiny text, we also had script size text, then footnote size, followed by small text, and then we had the normal size, followed by large, small l, and then large capital L, and then huge small h, and the final one was huge capital H. So if I rebuild this, you can see that those commands increase our font size. Now, one thing to note about these commands is that they change the relative font size. So if you want to set the normal size font in your document, the easiest way to do it is to set it as an option in the document class command. Now you are a little bit limited with what options you can set, so you can either choose 10 point, 11 point, or 12 point. So I think the default is 12 point, so if I change this to 10 point, we should get slightly smaller font, and the relative size of all of these font commands should also change accordingly. Now the next thing we will look at is coloring text. So if you want to color text, you use the package xcolor. And with the package xcolor, we have access to a couple of commands. So the first command we will use here is a command called colorbox. And this command takes two arguments. So the first argument accepts the color, and the second argument takes the text we want to be highlighted. So I'm going to choose the color red, and then I'll write here, this is some highlighted text. And I'll recompile this. And you can see in our output, we get some text highlighted in red. Now the xcolor package also supports other colors like blue or yellow or cyan or orange as well. So all of the obvious colors are there. Pink is there as well. If you want to change the color to a lighter shade of that color, what you do is you follow the color. So here we have orange, and then after it I put exclamation mark, and then if I put 25, we will now get a color which is 25% orange and 75% white. So you can see we get this lighter shade of orange, and that would work for any of the other colors as well. So I could make a light shade of red. As well as highlighting text, we can also change the color of text using a command called textcolor, and this works very similar. I set the color I want the text to change to, so here I write blue, and then I can write this is some blue text. And if I build this, we will get some blue text. And similarly, there's also a command called color, and I'll set the color here to red, and any text which comes after this command will now be formatted as red. So now you see in our output, we get some red text. Now, the next thing we will look at is changing the font in our document. So to do this, I'm just going to remove everything we've used in this example so far. And to add some filler text, I'm going to use the package lipsum. So with the package lipsum, I can use a command called lipsum. And this command, all it does is generate some paragraphs of lorem ipsum filler text, as you can see. Now, the default font in LaTeX is a font called Computer Roman Modern. But if I want to change the font, all I have to do is set a certain package. So for instance, if I use the package called new texttext, it will change the text font when I recompile this to a Times-like font similar to Times New Roman. And there's another similar package called new tx mat. The only difference is you use this one to change the mat font to a Times-like font. Now, if you want to change the font to more types of fonts, you actually have to change the compiler that you use. Now, if you're unsure what a compiler is simply a computer program which takes our main.tex file as an input, and then this block here represents our compiler. So here I'll put LaTeX compiler, and the compiler generates our PDF output. So this is our .pdf output file. Now, of course, expanding on this, our .tex file is generated from the computer program, which is our LaTeX editor, and then we, the human who is writing the .tex file, interface with the LaTeX editor. But this part here is the compiler, and there's a couple of different LaTeX compilers you can choose from, and some have more font support than others. So in Overleaf, if I come to menu, and then I come down here to settings, and you see compiler, you can actually choose from several different compilers. So normally this is set to PDF LaTeX, but if you switch to Z LaTeX, and then I'll just comment out this previous package for changing fonts, if you then use a package called font spec, now bear in mind this font spec package will only work for the Z LaTeX compiler. And then with the font spec package, you can use a command called set main font, and then you can set the font to any font which is installed on the system running the compiler. So on Overleaf, this will work for certain common fonts. So I can try switch this to Arial, and you can see we now get this in Arial. If I try switch it to Courier New, you can see we get the font is now in Courier New, but it won't work for certain fonts. So if I try run this in a font called Algerian, and I'll recompile this will throw an error eventually. There we go. So eventually my compiler timed out and it threw an error because this font mustn't be installed on the system which is running the LaTeX compiler, so whatever server Overleaf is running on. But if I were to copy this example and instead open it up in my locally installed tech editor, so I have this in Tech Studio, and I paste the exact same code, and I also here, if I go to Options and Configure Tech Studio, I get this window. And then here, if I go to Build, you can see what compiler I'm using. So I'm going to select Z LaTeX. And now if I build and view this in my local tech editor, you can see that it does apply the Algerian font. And if I wanted the Algerian font only applied to my title, I can come down after the make title command, and I can again use the set main font command and switch it back to something like Times New Roman. And if I build this, you can see that now the section and paragraphs below change to Times New Roman. Another useful command there as well is you can use a command called set mat rm font. And this is the font that gets used in mat mode when you're writing equations but it's printing text. So just to show you, I'm going to add an equation and say it's f of x is equal to sine of x. So if I build this, the word sine is actually going to be in the Algerian font, as you can see, and that looks quite odd. And what is happening there is whatever font is set as the \mat or m font, which it uses, there's a command mat or m. That's the font that's going to get used when you use any mat command, which is trying to print text. So if you want to change that font, we use the command which we're starting to type out called set mat or m font, and I'm just going to change this to Times New Roman as well. And then if I rebuild this, you'll see that will correct this issue, but it has to be done in the preamble. Whoops, not in the document environment. So I'm going to move it to my preamble below the set main font command. So if I build this now, you'll see that corrects this issue, and sine gets printed in the non-italic Times New Roman font, which looks better. Now, if you're wondering what other fonts can you use, that depends on what fonts are installed on your system. I am on a Windows computer, so in my Windows computer, if I open Control Panel and just search fonts and open this fonts folder, I can actually see all of the different fonts that are installed on my computer. So I can select from any of these fonts, say for instance here the font Georgia, and I just have to pass the name of that font to the actual command. So if I wanted to change my title to Georgian font, I use the word Georgia, and now our title should switch to the Georgia font. So that concludes this LaTeX quick start guide on text formatting, coloring, and changing fonts. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more LaTeX tutorials.